to have to see protocols that are going to have to be taken to get sports back to somewhat normal and somewhat the way that we have seen them before. And like you said, I agree with everything they're doing. I think this is a great step in the right direction. Let's move on to our second topic of the big three. And we're going to update you on Fox Sports Detroit. You know, they've been bringing us some great classic games throughout this time when we've pretty much been sportsless. And we're going to see some 2012 Tigers season this week, and next week we've got some all-star games. Art, when you're looking at this schedule right now, what game sticks out most to you, and what one are you most excited to watch?
Well, for me, it's the 1971 All-Star game at Tiger Stadium. That game. I think we've already mentioned it. I think there were like 9 to 10 Hall of Famers. I mean, you have obviously Al Kaline in that game. Reggie Jackson, a young Reggie Jackson's in that game. Roberto Clemente, God bless him. The man was just a humanitarian and a great baseball player. Henry Aaron. One day, Danielle, I'll share the story where I swore in front of Hank Aaron when he was with the Milwaukee Brewers. I was in high school. It's a very long story. I won't get into it today, but I was very embarrassed by it. And he was a gentleman. What a class act. So if you look at that lineup and how that game unfolded, it doesn't get much better than the 1971 All-Star game in my book, simply because there was no interleague play back then. The only time you saw these National League guys, extensively was in that game. The guys that you heard about, you might occasionally catch a National League game on television, but I was all about the Tigers back then in the American League. So that's the one that stands out for me.
Art, we actually get to watch a couple more Red Wings games as well. We know back in April, we did the entire Red Wings Classic series there. And now we're going to see the 1980 All-Star game for the NHL and the last game at Joe Louis Arena. And I know that game holds a very special place in most Red Wings fans' hearts.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was there, and where my office and Dana Wakiji's office was right off the Zamboni entrance at the Joe. And that's where everybody gathered for the last game at the Joe. And like Scotty was out there, Steve was out there, Steve Eiserman, there you go, do another shot. But aside from that, I mean, but you saw everybody. I mean, all the classic Red Wings of many generations, and it was just great to see those guys seeing each other for the first time, and then walking out there and being introduced. I mean, it was that last game at the Joe and the Red Wings beating the Devils. I mean, it was definitely classic. Riley Sheehan, who had not scored all season long, puts a couple in the net. So it's a great memory. It's a great memory. And again, I didn't think I would be into these games that much because the outcome. I'm super cool. I don't need to watch this stuff. But I'm glued to the tube every night watching their things. Right. Hey, I've been there, done that. Let me get on to watching baseball players not spit anymore. That's what I'm into at this point. But it's pretty cool. It's really good.
It is really cool. So make sure you're tuning in to all of those games this week, next week, and even into June on Fox Sports Detroit. A lot of fun games coming up. And we've got to move on to our next topic in the Big Three. And this one is a little bit of an NHL update. Again, we still know that a lot of things are on the table for a return to play for the NHL. But Gary Bettman, he was in a digital keynote interview with Leaders Week, which is a sports business conference. And he was kind of talking to a group of people about the league's efforts to get the season back during the coronavirus. And it sounds like now they've got 8 or 9 cities that are being considered for hub cities. And I mean, they really just have to look at the numbers for coronavirus. And he did make it clear that nothing is certain right now, but they do seem to have narrowed it down to 8 or 9 cities.
Yeah, 8 or 9 hub cities. What's really interesting about this proposal, and I've thought a lot about this, is that Major League Baseball has not started. The NFL has not started. So in a way, whatever they're thinking and doing is to get their season underway. Hockey and basketball are completely different. Their seasons were almost over. They were going to go into their playoff format. So now you have to look, and we've talked about this before, the integrity of the league. 8 to 9 teams, There might be, we hear, again, speculation, 24 teams in the playoffs, but then I hear, well, not really 24. There's going to be a play-in. Eventually, it'll be down to 16, what it normally is. But then you look at the arenas and venues, and I know Vegas Vegas, the NBA's talking about Vegas. The NHL's talking about Vegas. Anybody who's been to Vegas, I mean, it's wall-to-wall hotels. I mean, and these things are mammoth structures. So that kind of makes sense because even in the baseball plan, you're going to have to house everybody in the same hotel, including their families. So Vegas kind of makes sense. And then you look at the other venues, and I have to say this. I know the Red Wings might not be where we all would like in the standings, but if you look as far as buildings, it doesn't really get much better than Little Caesars Arena because of the Belfort Training Center. They have a bunch of locker rooms. The Little Caesars team has their own film room, and the Red Wings have that. I mean, there's a lot of amenities there. So from that standpoint, that building actually makes sense. However, you have to look at, unfortunately, although, we're flattening the curve, way to go, Michigan, way to go, Detroit. I'm not so sure it's in the running because of that. I mean, you hear a couple of cities that are being out there. Detroit has not been mentioned yet. But as far, again, as the facility itself, which is up for the, in the fan vote that we talk about, the best arena in the NHL, Little Caesars Arena has a lot of what the NHL would be looking for to be a host city, a host arena. Unfortunately, will that happen? We really don't know. But, I can't stress this enough. I think that hockey and basketball are both in a really, really tough spot because their seasons were almost done and they got to pick it up. They got to decide to have a championship, how they're going to do it. They're going to have to put off next season. Whereas baseball, even though there's going to have a shortened season, and the NFL basically does whatever they want, and so they're going to try to get it, underway. And, we'll see how that works out. We'll see where we're at back in September. But this is really, really a difficult situation for the NHL. And, and I think that Gary Bettman is really trying to keep all options open. And we haven't really heard a lot about their safety protocol because unlike baseball, it's a contact sport. They're skating, the bench. You can't have guys sitting in the stands if you're doing a line change or something. It's just not going to work. So there's a lot of things that are going to go into this. So, again, not an easy situation. And like I applauded Major League Baseball, I'm going to applaud the National Hockey League too. I think they're keeping all their options open. They want to decide a championship. They want to have a Stanley Cup champion. They want to have the draft, which I still think is going to be sometime in June. I don't know that for a fact. And, I think that, they want to keep the integrity of the league going. So it's a tough spot for the NHL, tough spot for all pro sports teams, but especially the two that I mentioned because their seasons were almost done. They want to decide a champion and they got to get back on there. But, health and safety is number one. I think what you see Major League Baseball doing, a lot of what's in this 67-page document is exactly maybe going to be the, the protocol that all teams will eventually, or all sports leagues will have to follow.
Definitely are. We may not have too many updates and everything still may be uncertain, but one thing we do know is both the MLB and the NHL are working diligently to come up with a plan to continue play. And as we get those updates, we will definitely be talking about them here. And that's what we've got for our Big Three segment today. A big thank you to our friends at Chevy for bringing us the Big Three segment. Chevy dealers are committed to using enhanced vehicle cleaning measures with CDC-approved cleansers, so when you're ready, you can find new roads with confidence. Now let's get into our mailbag segment delivered by our friends at Little Caesars. We've still got a lot coming up on today's show, though, so guys, be ready for all of the interviews. We've got Jonathan Scope, we've got Ken Daniels joining us later, and we've got Danny Dekeyser. But as I said, let's get into the mailbag delivered by Little Caesars. And joining us today is the one and only Ken Kale. Ken, as always, great to have you on. You make this segment the best, Ken. We're really excited to have you.
Well, it's always fun being with you on the Word on Woodward show, and I appreciate all the questions from the fans, and the fans usually have some really good questions, so I can't wait to get into the mailbag today.
Well, hey, let's get right into it then, and we'll start with you, Ken. So let's go to question one. This is David from Clinton Township, and he asked, the Avs said they kind of threw out the idea that they might wear Nordiques uniforms for their 25th season since leaving Quebec. Is this a classy or a trashy tribute, Ken?
Well, I guess it would be a classy tribute, but if you're asking me personally, I'm not a big fan of this type of uniform wearing. I know the Hartford Whalers were in Hartford for several years, and I think the Carolina Hurricanes actually 1 or 2 games wore the old Hartford Whaler jerseys, which are classic jerseys, and so is the Quebec Nordique jersey. But to me, it's you represent your city, your home city, and that's your identity. And I think if you wanted to pay tribute to a Quebec Nordique jersey, the best thing to do is maybe put a fleur-de-lis patch like you see on the shoulder of Malarchik right there, the goaltender, and maybe do it that way. But they're beautiful uniforms, to be honest with you. But again, I just think that the identity of the Colorado Avalanche are the Avalanche. They're no longer playing in Quebec City. So, you know, if they want to do something small, that's great. But to wear the jersey, I'm not so sure I'm a big fan of that.
I like that patch idea, Ken. You might have to write them and see what they think about that. I think that's a good idea. Art, what do you think? I know you're into jerseys. You always know every single jersey that walks through Little Caesars Arena. So I have to ask you what you think about this.
I would say that I've actually seen the Nordiques play the Red Wings. I mean, the Nordiques too. It's a really cool looking uniform. I really like that color of blue. It's uniquely their own. It's a cross between Honolulu blue and Carolina blue or something. Really, really a nice looking uniform. The only way that I would do this, and I think part of it is to sell some jerseys too. You know, and because Quebec City has like a 20,000 seat arena waiting for their team to come back that they built. It's standing empty right now. Only if Eric Lindros drops the puck in a Quebec Nordiques jersey. I think that would be really, really cool. That's what I would like to see. Eric Lindros in a Nordiques jersey finally, and then maybe you can have Peter Forsberg in a Flyers jersey. Have it be the Avalanche versus the Flyers, and, you know, let it all come full circle. You know what I'm talking about, Kenny.
Absolutely. And, you know, the other thing about those jerseys, they're very nice. And I remember I was at the last game at Olympia, and the Quebec Nordiques were the opposition for the Red Wings, and the Wings had to come back and I think scored 2 goals in the third period to tie it 4-4. Jacques Demers was the head coach of the Nordiques. But, you know, I just think that maybe another factor, if you want to wear the uniform, maybe play an exhibition game, you know, in Quebec City, but that's probably out of your control now because of the virus situation. But if this were a normal world, maybe a couple of exhibition games, 1 or 2 in Quebec City, wear the jersey and make the fans out there a little proud. But on the other hand, like I said, you know, the Avalanche, you know, came from Quebec, and actually my first broadcast was in Denver. And it was against the Quebec Nordiques or the Colorado Avalanche, who came from Quebec City. So, you know, I guess I have a soft spot in my heart, but I'm not a big fan of it. That's just me.
Well, both of you had some really good ideas. I think hopefully maybe they're listening. Maybe one of your guys' ideas will come to fruition here because they were both really good. But let's move on to our second question. And Art, this one is for you. This is Sean from Trenton. How has this not been shown as a classic Tigers moment? Art, I believe you said you had some of these pants, Zubas, right? I like the tiger print. I think you should probably get some.
Well, you know, as you know, Ken is my all-time favorite broadcaster along with Double D. And I know that Ken embraced the Zubas trend as anybody else. I mean, it's a good look. I remember when the Tigers did this, but the way I look at this, and I think I might call my investment broker or somebody right now, because that is the perfect quarantine look, isn't it? With everybody stay at home. Yeah. Zubas are really comfortable. Let's get this, let's make this a trend again. I mean, it looks just beautiful. The Tigers like it. I mean, I actually think that this is a pretty interesting and pretty cool look. You know, and especially now, I mean, who knows? Maybe you capitalize on Tiger King or something. You know, Tigers are hard, I guess, is what I'm saying. But, you know, I'm surprised it didn't catch on, actually, you know, Zubas. But I think today, I long, if I could find my Zubas from way back when, and they were all kinds. I mean, you know, Ken had, I don't know, like 50, 60 pair, I think, at one time, you know, but they were all colors. They were all teams. I mean, it was just it was a great trend that I think should actually come back. Why it never really caught on, I don't know. I think because there were too many of them. I just think that was it. There were too many Zubas. You could get them, as I said, in multiple colors, different teams, and all that. I think that it was just oversaturation of the market. If you just would have had some just Tiger Zubas, I think that it would have caught on.
The matching hoodies too. I think the three of us should figure out some way to match and wear those
Justin
to the show.
Verlander, I think he's growling in that. He's trying, he's like a method actor, Justin Verlander. You can tell he's like, look at that. I mean, he's doing his Tiger thing. I mean, they all kind of are growling. Look at Cabrera looks like he had just eaten somebody, Okay, I'm okay. You want to mess with me? I just eat your friend, but I love this. I love actually, this is kind of cool. This is but Verlander. All right, Justin, I got to give it to you, man. That's he's definitely growling like a tiger.
You might need to work on it a little bit. It's not scary enough. He needs to growl a little bit more scary there.
Cabrera looks menacing. I'm going to say that right now. He's a big guy as it is. Justin's no small slouch, but Miguel is just a huge, big man, and you can tell that's somebody. And back then he's the best hitter in baseball, so he had a lot of things going for him. But and that Zubaz look, he really pulled off pretty well.
All right, let's move on to this question for Ken, and I am very excited about this one, Ken, because you took part in a little EA Sports challenge where you guys were playing esports, and it was NHL 20. Your team kind of got in a little brawl. Now, I wouldn't call it a brawl, a little tiff on the ice, and Bob Probert was involved. And Ken, you actually stood up to Bob Probert and fought him. What was that like?
Keep in mind, Daniela, this is virtual and it's not real.
I don't know,
as
Ken.
You can see right here, Bob Probert gave Paul Coffey a cheap shot. You can see in the video here, Coffey's rolling around on his back. And, I'll tell you what, Proby hit me a couple of times. And that was the Tommy Hearns right hand that he taught me how to throw years ago back in the 70s. And it actually came in handy here in this virtual game. But
did you see that?
It was actually
like this.
It was actually a pretty good bout. He dinged me in the forehead a couple of times, but in the end, I had to stick up and answer the bell for my teammate.
Oh, that is great, Ken. That was a really cool thing that you and Carly did, and you came out victorious in that one. So I'm assuming Carly might want a rematch.
Well, she's been talking about it, and she said I was going down in this game, but you know what? I admired her team because they dominated most of the action, but when push came to shove and the game was on the line, we pulled our goaltender, and Robbie Fabry came up big with a tying goal with about 30 seconds to go. And then Fabry won it in overtime, about 5-6 minutes into overtime. So it was a really exciting game and actually a lot of fun. So it was a lot of fun, but I'm thinking maybe your guest later on, Ken Daniels, he can challenge Carly, put his team together, draft his team, and maybe he can get the broadcaster bragging rights going again.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea, Ken. I like it. Let's get on to question 4. And this one, Art, you're going to answer first, but Ken, I want you to answer it as well. What is the strangest superstition that you've seen from a player? Art, you first.
Well, I just have to go back to Ken's, after he knocks Proby down, the way he just kind of dusts him off and just skates like it's just another day at the office there. I mean, I'm going to say I think Proby was being nice. He knew he cheap shot at Coffey, so he was going to let Ken. It kind of reminds me, Ken's punch on Proby is what Ozzie said about when he got into his fight with Patrick Waugh. Patrick Waugh, obviously a bigger man than Chris Osgood, and Ozzie, one of the best quotes of all time was, his punches felt like pillows, and I think that Ken probably got a pillow punch in there and Proby just went down because he knew that he deserved it. I'm not trying to break the mood, Ken, because that dusting him off like that and skating to the bench, you stood up for your team, you were the captain, you did exactly what you had to do. So I am going to tip my cap to you on that one.
Well, here's the thing. As I skated by Proby, I told him, do you want to fight me or do you want Gordy to hit you over the head with a stick in the corner or a sharp elbow? He says, I'll fight you.
Yeah. Nobody wanted to be on the end of a Gordie Howe elbow. That they were legendary. They used to say Ty Cobb sharpened his cleats on the dugout steps before a game because he stole all those bases. It would slide up high. I think Gordie sharpened his elbows on the bench because nobody went near him. You get a shot from Gordie, an elbow shot, and every time I saw him, he would always come up to me, probably you too, Ken, and he'd always give you a shot with his elbow whenever he saw you. Be like, hey, Gordie, man, you might be, 75 years old, but those elbows still sting. Yeah, great job by you, Ken. I got to say this about superstitions. There's a zillion of them. There is a million of them. I mean, everybody has their own superstition, whether it's, do you put your jersey on first or do you have like 18 cups of coffee before a game? But I'll tell you how they're such creatures of habit. When I first started traveling with the Red Wings in the early 2000s, I would get on the bus and I would try to sit next to Ken or Paul Woods or one of the broadcasters. I did not know that there was a hierarchy or a pecking order. And Igor Larionov sat, I don't know, it was always on the heading, it would be on the right side of the bus, like 4 rows down. He would have the aisle seat, so to speak, and Pavel Datsyuk would sit next to him. Well, I got on the bus one time, and you never want to be late for the bus because, as Ken very well knows, Scotty's not waiting for you if you're late. So, so I would try to get there early, and the bus was usually empty. So I got in one day, not really thinking. My mind's on something else. What post game show? Am I going to use Barry White again for another bit? Whatever's going on in my mind, and I sit down, and I'm sitting there, and I'm just kind of doing my thing. And the next thing I know, there's a man like staring at me, like standing there and glaring down at me. And I look and it's Igor. And Igor is one of the nicest guys you're ever going to meet. I mean, he is a true gentleman. And, I call him, and it's true. Look it up. He's a modern day hero for the way that he stood up to the Russian Ice Hockey Federation when he was a player. But, that's for another time. And he looked at me and, he knew I didn't do it intentionally. He goes, Art. Like, what? Move. I said, oh, geez, Igor, I'm sorry about that. And I got up and I sat down, and I think it might have even been Ken said, oh boy, you never sit in Igor's seat. And, and that was, and I learned something that day. Well, that's a superstition. And obviously, and I later, why he really wanted to sit there wasn't so much, I have to be, 6 rows back on the right-hand side of the bus, was because Datsyuk was pretty much new, a raw rookie, and didn't know a whole lot of English. And he was talking to him about the game. Pav told me that, they would sit there and talk hockey about the opposition, who they were about to play. So, I'll never forget that. So, I mean, like I said, they are creatures of habit. There is a method to their madness.
All right, Ken, your turn. What's the strangest superstition you've seen?
Well, I don't know about strange superstitions, and I guess there's differences between practical jokes that players play on broadcasters and also former teammates and superstitions. But I remember one game, it was a preseason game, and we were in Toronto, and Kevin Hodson was the goaltender for Detroit. He was the biggest practical joker on the team too. But when he came into playing goal and he was getting ready for the game, he would go out to the bench by himself and he would tape the goalie stick that he would use for the game on the bench. And usually he didn't want to be bothered, but I just happened to get out of the locker room and go to the bench, and he took 3 rolls of tape, and they were all for different parts of the stick. I mean, big rolls of tape. So he would tape the blade first, and then after he was done with that, and there was a lot of tape left, he would throw it over his shoulder and it would land in the stands. And then he'd take the second roll and tape like higher up on the stick, do the same thing. And then he got to the knob, he did the same thing. Well, I'm going like, man, you're wasting a lot of tape. This is what I'm thinking to myself, right? So as he threw the last roll of tape into the stands, I went out after it and started picking him up, and he's going, Cal, don't touch that tape. He goes, wherever they land, that's where they land. And I'm like, holy cow, what a superstition this is, And so, luckily I didn't pick him up. I was going there to pick him up. And you know what? I think he shut him out that game in the preseason. So actually it kind of worked. But he was one of the biggest practical jokers. And maybe down the road we can talk about some practical jokes that the guys played on each other. But, there's a lot of players. They will never admit that they are superstitious, but I guarantee you a lot of them are.
Well,
Ken, what about you? Go ahead, Art. You go first.
I was just going to say, Kevin Hodson was incredible as far as a practical joke, and I know we have to move on, but there's real quickly, he was such a practical joker. Ozzy got back at him one time where he got Kevin's mask and his helmet, and he had taped on some pictures of Playboy bunnies on the back, and Hodson didn't know it. And so Hodson tells this story where he's warming up and he has all these fans gathered around him and they're laughing and they're looking and all this. And Hodson thinks it's because he's such a great goalie and he has this huge fan base. Little did he know until he took the helmet off what they were really looking at. But my favorite Kevin Hodson thing is that in the hotel, he would take his remote from his room, go into another player's, and they would sit there and be watching TV, and then he would start changing the channel randomly from his remote. And the player would start beating his remote and looking at it and saying, what the heck, what's going on here? And they call up the front desk, and a guy would come, and the guy say, Mr. Whomever, Mr. Iserman. He probably never did it for Steve Iserman, another shot. But the guy would say, I'm serious. They changed the battery, they give him a new remote. The gentleman would leave from the hotel, and then it would start all over again. He would just constantly, change the remote. So Kevin Hodson's a great guy. We should actually get him on because he is just full of stories, a wealth of knowledge. I saw him last year in Buffalo. Actually, his son goes to, I don't know if it's Niagara or one of the schools that are in the Buffalo area, and so he came up to see the Red Wings and when they were playing the Sabres. But Ticker's a great, great, great guy.
Ken, I was just going to ask you if you have any superstitions yourself. Like before you get on the air, is there anything that you do every single game?
No, not really. But, when I think about it, I kind of do my notes and game preparation the same all the time. And that's probably because I don't want to miss anything. But all my line charts, my notes are the same. And I don't know if you'd call that a superstition or not, but, that's something that I do. But, I just laugh. You look at movies like Major League and you see some of the players there and the superstitions they have. And again, what amazes me is that you'll see players go out there and, be the first one to skate around, touch the dot in the face-off circle or tap both goal posts when they come out onto the ice between or after periods or between periods. And they'll never admit that they have a superstition, but I guarantee you they do have a superstition.
Those were some great stories, guys. Ken, as always, thank you for joining us for the mailbag delivered by Little Caesars. Always great to have you. Great stories today, and we will see you next time. Thanks again, Ken.
All right. Thanks, guys.
And a big thank you to our friends at Little Caesars for delivering us the mailbag. Little Caesars proudly introduces their hot and ready pepperoni cheeser. You get a large pizza topped with classic pepperoni, fresh mozzarella, and a toasted Parmesan and Asiago cheese crust for just $7. Try our no-contact pizza portal or delivery from Little Caesars. You guys, I know we've had a lot happen already in this show. Ken Kale, always great to have him, but we've got so many guests coming up on this show and you won't want to miss it. We're going to talk to Danny Dekeyser, Jason Beck, Ken Daniels, and so much more. So stay with us. And right now we're going to catch up with Carly.
Thanks, Daniela. What's up? It's time for Catching Up with Carly, presented by Meyer. Today, I'm joined by Detroit Tigers second baseman, Jonathan Scope. How's it going, Jonathan?
I'm doing good, Charlie. How you doing?
Good. I'm doing great. What have you been doing during the stay-at-home order to stay in shape and keep yourself busy?
I'm staying out here with my family, and I'm working on gym. and hitting in my house in my cage and keep my body ready and keep my body in shape. So when the call come, I'm ready to come back. I'm ready to work.
There you go. All right. Have you picked up any new hobbies during this time?
Yes, I'm playing checkers a little bit,
Okay.
and I'm playing some video games too, and a lot of card game with family.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so you were only at spring training with the Tigers for a couple weeks when the season was put on pause. How were you adjusting to a new team?
It was good. You know, a lot of young guys and a lot of hungry guys that want to play baseball and want to get better. And I played against them last year, and you see that they want to get better. And when I join them, you know, I fit right in and talk with them and help them. And they can help me too and talk with me and make me feel at home. So I grown with them and trying to be better.
Love it. Okay, and how do you feel like your performance was during that shortened spring training?
I feel my performance was good. You know, I was working on things that I want to do to get better. That I was last year I didn't do very good. You know, and I was working to get better. And I was ready for the season to start. You know, to go with my teammate and start winning some ball games. But you know, it is what it is. But now, you know, I'm waiting for a call to get back and to win games.
Hopefully soon. We're keeping our fingers crossed. So you were acquired by the Detroit Tigers last December. What was it like to go to a team with such rich history?
To just go to Detroit, you know, it's an honor for me, you know, because I play against them. In the first 2014, you know, we beat them. But you know, to play with Miggy, you know, it's an honor for me to play with Miggy. You know, I play against him, you know, and just to play with him, it's an honor for me. You know, that guy is Hall of Famer. So, and the Detroit Tigers, you know, it's a winning baseball team. So, it's an honor for me to put a Tigers uniform on.
Love it. What are you looking forward to most about your move to Detroit?
I'm looking just to go out there and perform, you know, the way I know how to perform and bring the winning Detroit back, you know, and start winning games and whatever I can do, you know, to help my team win. It's a team sport, so whatever you can do to help. So just win games, you know, no matter how, just win games.
Absolutely. Can't wait to see it. And now, what do you hope to achieve with the team this season when it resumes?
As a team, you know, I think everybody's goal should be win the World Series to get a ring, go to the playoff and win the ring. So, you know, I think it's my mentality, you know, to go and win the ring. So I hope it's everybody's mentality just to go to the playoff and win the World Series.
Hey, we need that back in Detroit, so hopefully so. So you mainly played shortstop in your minor league days. How was the transition from that position to second base?
I think if you play shortstop, you can play anywhere on the field. You can play outfield, you know, first base, second base, everywhere. So it wasn't tough, but the angles is different, you know, because as a shortstop, the angles change a little bit when you go to second. You know, first it was not too difficult, but you just gotta keep working hard, and I get it, you know. And I went to second base when they drafted Manny Machado.
Mm-hmm.
I played third base a little bit, and then I played second base, and from there I started playing second base.
Okay, that's interesting. And you've made it so far as a professional athlete. What got you started playing baseball?
My family. You know, I grown up as a family. Like my brothers play baseball before me, my cousin, my dad, uncle, everybody. You know, everybody can play baseball. So I was the youngest one, and I just go in the backyard and play with him. I think I gotta thank them. That's why I got better, because I play with them, and they bigger than me, they older than me. So I gotta play better for them to pick me in a pickup game, because always they was pick me last because I'm the smallest one. So I gotta get better. So now everybody pick me first.
I understand your brother still plays, correct?
Yes, he's still playing. He's playing in Amsterdam right now.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. What was like growing up in Curacao?
Growing up in Curacao, it's a small island, but I think it's a family island. Everybody know each other, and it's an honor for me, you know, to grow up in Curacao. You know, it's a lot of beaches. Baseball is everything for us. You know, I went to Little League World Series. Curacao is lovely people. You know, everybody loves each other. Everybody cheer for everybody, and you know, you got to visit over here. It's pretty nice.
Well, I love it, and I know it's really hard to go through this pause right now, and I know you want to get back to the game, but the silver lining of all of this is that family time that you get to spend with everyone at home.
Yes, you know, you get to spend time with your family and friends, because in Curacao, friends is family too. If we have friends, we call them family. So everybody is family down here. It's very nice. You know, we want to play baseball, but we come back in the family, and it's very nice. But now, you know, we're ready to get back to baseball as soon as possible.
Love it. Okay, and I understand you speak 4 different languages. That's really interesting. I only speak English, unfortunately. Can you say baseball in each language? Is it different or is it the same?
No, in Curacao is baseball.
Okay.
In Dutch is handball.
Okay, that's
Yes.
interesting.
In Spanish is pelota, baseball. In English is baseball. I think
That's awesome. The more you know, right? I just learned something. Well, Jonathan, thank you so much for your time. I can't wait until the day we see you playing with the Old English D on your jersey. Until then, I hope you stay well and enjoy your family time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. And thanks for tuning in to Catching Up with Carly, presented by Meyer. Back to you.
Thank you, Carly. Jonathan Scope, wow, 4 different languages. That makes me feel like I need to learn a second one. So excited to see what he does for the Tigers on the field, and very interesting guy off the field. Great interview, Carly. And we're going to have you stick around for Bet You Didn't Know, presented by Motor City Casino Hotel. And this one, you know, I'm just going to kind of be quiet and say my little prayer that the trivia, 2 truths and a lie gods are on my side today, because you guys know this isn't my strong suit. But Art, I'm going to let you take this one away now.
Well, you know, if you look at this, Tiger Stadium was an ancient ballpark, right? And, you know, it was a double-decker, and it had a real history with it, the short right field porch. And, you know, it was difficult to hit home runs out of Tiger Stadium. Now, if you look at this, 3 of these guys, 2 of them hit the ball out of Tiger Stadium.
Oh, geez.
But one of them did not hit a home run out of Tiger Stadium. Cecil Fielder, Reggie Jackson, or Kirk Gibson. Which of these 3 fine baseball players did not hit a home run out of Tiger Stadium?
Do you want going first, Art? You got
Oh, crap.
Carly, you don't let me down, Carly. You're batting 1,000.
Oh, boy. This might just be more of a guess. I mean, I'm not going to answer Gibby. You said, okay, it's Fielder, Jackson, or Gibby, correct? Those are my options.
One of those 3 did. Yeah, they did not hit a home run out of Tiger Stadium. They hit plenty of homers, but.
Art, I'm too young for this question. Okay, I'm going to go Reggie Jackson. I'm going to pick B for literally no reason whatsoever. That was a complete guess.
All right.
I don't like your response to my answer. Art, can I change?
No. Oh, no. It's final answer. It's locked in. I've been watching a lot of Millionaire lately. All right, Daniela, you now you're on a one game winning streak. Maybe you can make it 2. Fielder, Jackson, Gibby.
Okay. I mean, I'm going with this answer because I'm honestly, I'm pretty sure that's the right answer. And it is the same answer as Carly, Reggie Jackson. I am almost positive that that's the answer. So I'm going with it, Art. I'm going with it.
If I'm right, this will be incredible. Art, land on me.
It's incredible because you're both right. This is kind of a trick question because Reggie Jackson in the 71 All-Star game actually hit a ball that would have traveled to Toledo and out of the ballpark. However, it hit the light tower in right field and bounded back. So was not technically hit out of the ballpark. Now, a lot of people hit the ball out of right field or over right field. It was left field, which was really, really difficult. And only 4 people have done that. And here it is. Here's the light tower. And boom, it hit the light tower because everyone saw it. I mean, it was a mammoth blast. And, but it hit the light tower. Reggie Jackson, who I believe was still playing for the Oakland Athletics back at that time. So, but you could tell from the moment he hit it, and he stopped and looked at it because this was a pop. I mean, this thing just went whoo, and and it hits the light tower and comes down. So officially, it did not go out of the ballpark. Whereas I said, the ball would still be traveling even here in 2020. That's how well he hit it, how high he hit it, how far he hit it. But it hit the light tower. I really want left field though. Only 4 players have hit it over left field, and only one was when he was with a Tiger, and that was Cecil Fielder. Cecil Fielder is the only Tiger to hit it over left field. Keep that in your pocket because next year I'm going to ask you that question. So let's see how well you listen to me. So
noted. All right, I have to say though,
Jackson,
we do not know the answers. We do not know the answers. I am not looking at something. I did not Google this. I did get really good grades in school. And part of it was because I'm very knowledgeable and I learn very well. But the other half of it's because I'm very, very good at guessing, apparently.
Don't be patting yourself on the back here, Carly. Win with humility.
I have to.
Be humble.
I have to. Look at me. I'm still batting 1,000. How many weeks have we been doing this? Yeah,
because I knew
I
for sure
that as well.
And I knew Gibby did it,
right?
But I was unsure about Reggie Jackson. That's why I said I was almost positive. So hey, you didn't stump me today, Art.
That's how I did it.
I have to do better.
Don't worry, I'm going to be working on it with a little bit of a trick question. But let's face it. I mean, Big Daddy Fielder. Cecil, man. I mean, he was. He was just something else. I mean, as a power hitter too. So. He definitely hit it out of Tiger Stadium, but Reggie Jackson, which is odd. You would think all the games that he played at Tiger Stadium, Reggie Jackson, that he would have been able to hit a ball out, and he actually did. It probably would have been one of the longest home runs tape measured home runs hit out of the ballpark in Tiger Stadium history. Unfortunately, it hit the light tower.
How do they measure that? Do they go find the ball?
Oh yeah, it would have been at probably one of the watering holes down the street or something, or that General Kozlowski statue or something that's way in the heck away from Tiger Stadium. I think I'm sure I'm mispronouncing the general's name, but I salute your service to our country. That thing is far away. He hit it. He hit it as far as that. I mean, it's far, baby. It was far, but it hit the light tower. Have I said that enough? It hit the light tower.
Is light tower the new keyword?
It hit the light tower, Carly.
Got it. Okay. Got it. Okay.
Oh gosh! All right, well, you're gonna have to
I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, you do. You're still like almost perfect. Have you gotten one wrong yet? This is BS.
I haven't, and I don't know how. I mean, I have a lot of sports knowledge, but these questions, to not get any of them wrong, I'm really putting myself up on a pedestal today, but I'm surprising myself.
Well deserved, Carly. Well deserved.
Thank you.
And that was everybody. Thank you to our friends at Motor City Casino Hotel for bringing us Bet You Didn't Know this week and every week here on The Word on Woodward. Carly, I know that you're not only really, really good at trivia, but you're really, really good at social media, if that's even how you would word that. I don't know. But you're great at manning all of our social media accounts and making sure that we're interacting with all of our fans all week long, actually, not just on show day. So what do you got for us today?
That's right. Thank you, Daniela. I've been checking out social media online, and this is what I found. The Detroit Red Wings and Labatt Blue have left it to you guys, the fans, to decide which Red Wings alumni players would win in a 3-versus-3 tourney. So check out this bracket. Let's take a look. Just started, and the winner will be announced June 1st. So go vote on the Detroit Red Wings social media because, again, it is up to you guys. And then moving on to the Detroit Tigers, they will be hosting a virtual happy hour with Miller Lite tomorrow, hosted by none other than Matt Shepard. Guests will include Hall of Famers Alan Trammell and Jack Morris and Tigers manager Ron Gardenhire. Once again, it's tomorrow on Zoom, and only the first 1,000 fans will be able to join. So it's on a first come, first serve basis. So keep your eye on the Tigers Twitter. They will be tweeting that Zoom information tomorrow at 5 p.m. Once again, first come, first serve basis. First 5,000 fans, and you don't want to miss, because listen to all those guests. It's incredible. So Daniela, I'll catch you guys later. And fans, don't forget to send in your questions. We will be answering them later in the show.
Thank you, Carly. And as she said, you guys make sure you're on Facebook, even on Twitter, Instagram, whatever you're on. Send in your questions for us, because we want to answer them later in the show when we bring back Carly for Let's Socialize. Aside from that, we're going to hear from Jason Beck in Brush Street Beat. And we've still got an interview with Ken Daniels too. So make sure you're tuning in. And for now, let's get into Downtown Hockey Town. Now let's get into Downtown Hockey Town, presented by Labatt Blue Light. Today's guest, we are so excited to welcome Red Wings defenseman Danny Dekeyser. Danny, I know it's been a crazy time for everybody, but how are you holding up during all this quarantine stuff?
I'm doing good. It's definitely been a little bit different. Obviously, it's been different for everybody, but just a lot of at-home time, a lot of family time, and it's kind of. I've actually been really busy. I have a newborn and a 2-year-old at home, so I really don't have much downtime.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your recovery process. You missed a majority of the season and had a back surgery back in December. Where are you at in recovery right now, and how are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. I've been like I told you guys. I haven't really had a lot of team treatment. That's been the one downside to this whole quarantine, is not being able to get treatment from the team and our staff and trainers there. But I've been doing some FaceTime and getting all my workouts sent to me here at home, so I'm able to stay up on all the rehab exercises and all the workouts and whatnot. So. It's obviously been a little bit different, but it's been good. I'm feeling a lot better, which is good. It took me a little bit to kind of feel better again, but I'm finally kind of over that hump, I think, and definitely doing a lot better. I'm looking forward to skating, hopefully soon, when we can get back on the ice. But obviously, we don't know when that will be yet.
Danny, I want to go back to October 22nd. When you, I guess, hurt yourself. It was against Vancouver. I remember specifically a play where I think, unfortunately, the Canucks scored, and you kind of went backwards and fell into the Red Wing net. And you got up and you skated off the ice, and we haven't seen you since. Do you remember that play? Is that when you really hurt it? And did you know the extent of how serious an injury this was? I mean, back surgery is nothing to be, it's not like a walk in the park or anything.
Yeah. No, I think I remember the play you're talking about. I think it was like third period late in that game. But I think my back was something that was just kind of progressively getting worse. And a week or so before that, I had missed a game. I was kind of a late scratch out west. I think it was in Vancouver, actually. But it was just kind of something that kind of progressively, I guess, got worse on me. And then it got to the point where I just had to, they had to go in and fix it up. So I was trying to, try to rehab and try to make it better through other means other than surgery. But in the end, I guess I had to get the operation done.
And you mentioned that you haven't been able to skate yet for obvious reasons. That's kind of being delayed right now. And with the season on pause, if there is a return and they do some kind of training camp for the Red Wings, do you see yourself skating with the team and maybe playing the end of the season? Or are you kind of set on waiting until the 2021 season?
I think it all depends on when that might be. I'm not ruling out that if we do end up playing the rest of our games sometime this summer that I could be out there. I'm hoping to be. That would be great. But at the same time, I'm going to need, some time to get back on the ice. It's going to take me a while because I've been out for so long. I haven't skated at all since December. So, that's a really long time. So once I do get back out on the ice and I'm cleared to do that, I just going to have to slowly build up, because there's a mental side after an injury where, you can't just rush into things. It's kind of a slow progression. So I'm looking forward to getting back on the ice, and, I'm not ruling out any return this summer. I'm just not sure yet.
You are now one of the elder statesmen on the team. I think, Biega's older than you, and, Nemeth, I think, is a little bit younger than you. But how is your role now going to change? You're one of the top 2 defensemen on the team. We know that. You were a significant loss last season. I think everybody knows that too. But do you see yourself taking more of a leadership role? You're a pretty laid back guy. I mean, will you be more vocal? How do you on the team is going to change?
Yeah, I think we talked about this before, and obviously, it goes by quick. I feel like, I was just coming out of Western Michigan like a couple of years ago, and it's been, I think, 8 years now. So it flies by, and suddenly I'm one of the older guys in the team. But I think, I definitely want to make the younger guys feel comfortable, because I think when you're comfortable and you walk into the room and you're not nervous, that's when you're playing your best, is when guys are, pushing you a little bit, but also at the same time making you feel like you belong there as well. So for me, that's what I try to do with some of the younger guys, is just kind of make them feel like they belong, and make them feel comfortable, and give them the best shot of going out there and playing their best. So I think that's what I'll keep doing. If I need to be a little bit more vocal, I can do that, but we'll just play how it goes.
Danny, you obviously got to spend some time watching the team play, and I know that was probably tough for you to kind of sit back and watch. But in doing that, we all know it was a tough season for the team as a whole. But what positives did you take away from watching this season?
I think a lot of guys developed this year, and I think there was a lot of guys who learned what it's going to take to play in the NHL. So obviously, points-wise and standings-wise, it was not a great year for us, not where we want to be ever again. So you got to look at the positives, and I think there were guys that got a taste of the NHL and what it's going to take to play in the league and compete in the league for a long time, and not just kind of kick the can around for 2 or 3 years and be playing somewhere else. I think guys realize what they need to do to try to stick in the lineup and give themselves a chance at having a 10 or a 15-year career.
I know that you've been on the ice during training camp, but Gus Lindstrom seemed to, once he was called up from Grand Rapids, seemed to play pretty well. People are eager because he's the number 1 pick, 6th overall, and Mo Sider. Have you been able to form an opinion on those guys, or is it just too early? You just haven't seen them enough to figure out, what kind of game they're eventually going to have in the NHL?
Yeah, I think Lindstrom was, when he was up, I was a huge fan. I thought he played great. He had great poise, and I could tell he always has his head up, and he's when he's got the puck, he's got his head up, and he's making good plays, making good decisions, and he just sees the ice really well. So I think he's going to be a good player for us. And I think same with Sider. I don't know. I haven't really seen Sider play as much. He wasn't up with us last year. He was up in the preseason a little bit, but. He's a big kid. He can skate. He's got a long stick, long reach. So I think he can definitely put himself in a position to be a top 2 defenseman in the league.
Danny, I have one more question for you. I want to go back a little bit to kind of your training in the recovery process. I know you said you haven't been able to have any contact with the team trainers or anything like that, but have you been sticking to a specific plan that they've given you, or have you kind of been doing this all on your own since we've been in the quarantine period?
Yeah, it's been a plan that we've come up with through the trainers on the team. So I didn't just throw anything together myself. It's all, kind of laid out in a progressive manner that we started slow and starting to build up more and more each week or every couple of weeks with different stuff. And so it's been going good. Definitely feeling a lot stronger and a lot better. Just ready to start playing hockey again. I only played 8 games this year, so it's tough when you go through a full summer last year of off-season training, then you go through training camp and the preseason, all that, and then your season ends so early in the year. So that was definitely tough, and having to wait wait, from December through April, to the end of the season, just have to watch all the games. That was definitely tough. So, this year I'm hoping to stay healthy and have a good year because I'm excited to get back playing again.
3-on-3 overtime you excel at. You're a terrific skater. Do you think because you're tall and lanky, and I'm not going to ask you about eating pizza or anything today. I'm going to shelve that. But what I'm curious about, do you think you sneak up on guys 3-on-3? They just don't realize just how great a skater you are and how you have offensive skill.
Yeah, I think the 3-on-3, it's definitely a little bit different out there. Obviously, there's a ton of open ice and a lot of room, a lot of space. So it's different. It's different than playing 5-on-5. And until I think you get until you play it a bit and get a feel for it, you don't really know what it's like. So it took a little bit of an adjustment to get used to. I had never really played that. We didn't have it in college or anything like that until I got here to Detroit. So. It's just one of those things where there's so many, if you play good defense and you take care of the puck 3-on-3, you're going to get your chances, and it's all about the transition. So if you can catch some guys on the other team cheating for offense and try to make them pay, that's, I think, the best way to do it.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Danny. It's been great to see you and catch up, and glad you're feeling well.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate chatting with you. We'll talk to you soon.
Downtown Hockey Town is brought to you by Labatt Blue Light, refreshing Canadian Pilsner. Visit your local retailer when safe to pick up some Labatt Blue Light. Great to hear from Danny Dekeyser. He hasn't played most of the season, so definitely good to see that he's making progress in his recovery. Great to hear that he's feeling well. Art, one thing that we kind of talked about in that interview was that he was a big part of the Red Wings defense, and he was a veteran presence on that blue line. And I don't think fans really realize how big of a loss he was for the Red Wings. Can you kind of delve into that a little bit more? How big was it to lose Danny so early on?
Well, he leads them in ice time. The last couple of seasons, he plays in all situations. He's a great penalty killer. He can also play on the power play, as we saw and as we talked about, 3-on-3. So he is a complete hockey player. I know on occasion Dekeyser gets knocked because he signed a long-term deal, but I think he's worth every penny. I really do. And I think the thing that we have to understand is when you lose a player of Dekeyser's ability, that affects the whole team because you're taking away someone who makes players around him better. Philip Hronek could have really benefited from having Dekeyser in the lineup the whole season. Gus Lindstrom, when he came up, he could have benefited from that. If Mo Seider would have come up, just the way he prepares and what he does, you could tell he's a pretty low-key guy, but he understands his role. And, I always tease him about being the elder statesman on the team, that I knew that the Red Wings blue line is in transition, and it's definitely in transition. So a guy like Danny Dekeyser, you need that good, veteran, stable leadership and a guy who can actually play in all situations. That's why when he was gone, when he injured his back and he had to have back surgery, only playing 8 games was a significant loss for the Red Wings. Really, really just a huge loss. And I think that all his detractors, all you have to do is look at how the Red Wings played after Dekeyser went out of the lineup, and then maybe they'll start giving him a little bit of respect, because Danny Dekeyser is definitely a mainstay on the Red Wings blue line, somebody that they're going to need, especially as we see this blue line going through transition.
And he was playing really well, even though he did only play 8 games. He looked great in those 8 games at the beginning of the season.
No doubt he did. And, again, I can't stress this enough. And I know that the 3-on-3, and I'm a big fan of 3-on-3, especially with the big 3-on-3 tournament we have going on right now on social media. But you can tell that he's a complete player. He can skate like the wind. He has offensive ability. I know that one goal that we just showed, the pass wasn't there, but he was able to, knock it off with, stop it with his skate and then flip it up before the goalie got over. I mean, that's why he's a pro, obviously, but that's what Danny Dekeyser brings. I mean, I'm a big Dekeyser fan, without question. because I see him play every day, and I know what this team looks like when he's not in the lineup. And let's put it this way: I'd much rather have him in the lineup than out of the lineup.
Definitely agree with you there, Art. And it sounded like he was kind of getting ready to get back to skating as soon as he is able to. So that's good news. Great to hear from Danny Dekeyser. Guys, we've still got a lot coming up in the last hour of the show here. We're going to hear from Ken Daniels later in the headliner presented by Miller Lite. And we're going to talk some more Tigers baseball in just a minute. But Tigers fans, I do want to let you know that the Tigers happy hour is actually tonight at 5 p.m. And Carly's going to talk a little bit more about that when she comes back for Let's Socialize later in the show. But that is tonight at 5 p.m. So now let's get into talking some more Tigers baseball. Now let's get into Brush Street Beat, presented by our friends at McLaren Health System. And for today's show, we're going to welcome back Jason Beck from MLB.com, Tigers reporter. It's great to have you back, Jason. Really looking forward to talking to you today.
Thanks for having me on again. It's great to be back.
Of course. So we're going to talk some of the Tigers Classic games that are running on Fox Sports Detroit this week, which includes the 2012 team. So a lot of exciting things there. But before we get into that, I want to talk to you about the series of articles that you're putting out on MLB.com, and you're kind of going through each Tigers position and going top 5 all time. So the one I specifically want to start and ask you about is right fielders, because obviously Al Kaline took that number 1 spot. I'm going to assume that was kind of a shoo-in, but there's a lot of really big names on that list. Was that one specifically tough for you to decipher? Did you take the fan vote into more consideration? How did that go for you?
That one was, full disclosure, the articles I write every week are done before the fan polling. So I don't really have too much of an opportunity to take those into account, although some people have been pretty helpful as far as sending in suggestions, kind of reading ahead a little bit and anticipating what position is going to be coming up next. But right field and first base were really the 2 toughest ones for me. First base was awfully difficult because choosing between Hank Greenberg and Miguel Cabrera. And then right field, Kaline was really a no-brainer at the top. But then you go further down the line, and there were really good players on that list. It's a position where the Tigers have 3 Hall of Famers. Harry Heilman was one of the best hitters of his era, probably underrated. Sam Crawford was an incredible player. Choosing between those 2 guys was incredibly tough. And then even going beyond that, you've got Kirk Gibson with his heroics and his special place, I think, in the hearts of today's fans. And also, Jim Northrup. A lot of people don't think of him as a right fielder because that was Kaline's spot for really the entirety of the time he played, except for a couple of years in center field. But Northrup ended up playing more games in right field than any other outfield position for him. So it kind of ended up having to include him in that list. And I almost felt bad that, you could go 5 deep on this list, and we still didn't have room for Miguel Ordonez, who owns one of the biggest home runs in franchise history, as well as one of the best single seasons for a Tigers outfielder in history with what he did in 2007 with the batting title and finishing runner-up for AL MVP to A-Rod.
Jason, it's interesting. You're bringing all this up, and I want to ask you more of an overview. I'm looking at your what would be, I guess, your all-time team from position to position. And, Sweet Lou Whitaker's my favorite, but, Charlie Gehringer, who's from Fowlerville, Michigan, a local product, that's one of the forgotten Tigers. When you were compiling this, what did you learn about this franchise? Did you ever sit back and you say, my gosh, the players that the Tigers have had have been some really, for lack of a better term, really heavy hitters?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's been a real learning experience. I knew a decent amount, but when you get into the bios from Sabre and you learn about some of these guys' lives, and the fact that the Tigers had a decent number of players who came from Michigan and ended up spending their lives and careers here, I think that adds to the special feeling around this franchise. But yet, what you mentioned, R2, is the talent level just all around the lineup because of the rich history here. I think I got an appreciation for that too when, MLB.com, another one of the projects we've done, was the Dream Bracket a few weeks ago, in which you put together an all-time team from across the eras, and putting together a roster and a lineup for that team to have them compete against other all-time franchise teams was really tough, making some of these decisions. But you also ended up looking at that roster and thinking, this is an incredibly loaded lineup. And when you put that out there, when those lineups first came out, you even saw people like John Heyman and Brian Kenny on MLB Network looking at this and saying, look, this is one of the 3 or 4 best lineups that we have in this competition. So I think that says a ton about what the Tigers have in terms of their franchise history in individual talents over the years. Now, I think it gets overlooked sometimes because it's not Yankees or Dodgers or Red Sox or even Cubs in terms of how much attention, national attention, gets put on it over the years.
Jason, I'd imagine that Justin Verlander is going to make an appearance on your starting pitchers list. Now, can't confirm that obviously, but I'm gonna say that we might see him on that top list, and we're gonna get to see him in action on the Fox Sports Detroit Classic games with the 2012 Tigers team. Just throw it back a little bit. When you think about that 2012 Tigers team, what stands out to you most?
The lineup was so star-studded and so formidable, just up and down. When they brought in Prince Fielder and they moved Miguel Cabrera from first to third, you had Delman Young back coming off a really good stretch run, and you had Johnny Peralta at short. You had so many good hitters at different spots. Alex Avila, coming off an all-star season there. There was so much strength up and down that lineup. And then you combine it with that rotation, Verlander coming off an MVP and Cy Young year, but also 2012 was really the year we saw Max Scherzer start to emerge as a frontline starter. It was a year that he really developed that curveball, working with then pitching coach Jeff Jones on it. And he really came into his own in terms of being, not just that guy who fit in well behind Justin Verlander, but almost being a co-ace. And you saw him emerge as that type of pitcher you wanted out there, in his own right, not just the next best guy after Verlander. And then you add in Doug Fister. You've got Rick Porcello, who was starting to find his groove there, starting to discover himself as a pitcher. It's just really good starting pitching up and down the line. But that lineup was just so I always remember watching those guys take batting practice before games, and some of the shows they would put on, just putting home runs into these seats, especially when they would do it on the road. I remember them going to Pittsburgh and watching Prince Fielder and Miguel Cabrera, putting batting practice balls into the river there, or trying to. And just the shows that they would put on, what they were capable of, just an amazing roster. And if they had managed to win it all, I think you'd be talking about one of the best rosters in franchise history.
Yeah, it's interesting when you look back at that at 2012, that whole kind of mini era. Every time like Max Scherzer comes back to town, or even JV now with the Astros, there just seems to be a sense of frustration, and current Tigers too that you talked to who played back then, that how did they not win a championship?
I think it's a combination of both. I think you look at 12 and especially the 2013 team, because you had Victor Martinez back and you brought in Torrey Hunter, and it really looked like a team that was set to win it all. Max Scherzer was a Cy Young winner. Just such a complete team in 12 and 13. I still think in 2012, that layoff between the ALCS and the World Series really kind of slowed their momentum, and it was really tough for them to come back from it. And once the Tigers lost those first 2 games in San Francisco, you just had that feeling of here we go again, because it felt so similar to 2006. And then coming back in 2013, I remember the rallying cry was 4 more wins, which mathematically, yeah, you're right, but also discounted how much you would have to go through to make that run again to get there.
Well, aside from not having a World Series on the year, 2012 was a really great year for the Tigers. So it's going to be fun to relive some of these moments thanks to our friends at Fox Sports Detroit. And Jason, thank you so much for joining us again for Brush Street Beat. It's always great to chat with you, and I'm really looking forward to your pitchers list that should be coming out soon, right?
Absolutely. I'm going to be starting on that here probably later on this week. So I am looking forward to going through a lot of different stats to try to figure out who ranks up at the top of my list.
Yeah, you've got your work cut out for you this week, but I am very excited to see it. Another thank you to Jason Beck for joining us on today's Brush Street Beat, which is presented by McLaren Health System. Thank you to McLaren for bringing you Brush Street Beat this week and every week here on The Word on Woodward. Always great to hear from Jason Beck, and he's doing something really cool with these top 5 articles that he's putting out. Art, I've got to ask you, who would be your number 1 starting pitcher on that list?
Well, I think you really have to go with Justin Verlander as my starting pitcher. I mean, he was a big money pitcher for the Tigers. Certainly one season doesn't get much better. And Denny McClain being 31-6 back in 1968. Mickey Lolich was just a workhorse. Hal Newhouser, who I believe won a Cy Young during the war years for the Tigers, also from the state of Michigan. I mean, they've had some pretty good pitchers, but really, when I really look at it, it has to be JV. I think Justin Verlander, if you wanted someone to take the mound for you in a really big game, I believe it would be Justin Verlander. But look, I'm looking at the starting rotation. Look at Max Scherzer. How can you not put him in there? I'd have to put Denny and Mickey Lolich in there as well. And, Hal Newhouser, and then, John Hiller to anchor the bullpen with Willie Hernandez. I mean, that's the thing that I think what we were trying to get at with Jason is that, the Tigers, I keep saying it. I mean, they have a long and illustrious history, and they have. And if you put, and I saw that, the teams that Major League Baseball put, their all-time teams, the Tigers stack up against everybody. I mean, from Ty Cobb, on down the list to Al Kaline and everything in between, and even above that with Miguel Cabrera. I mean, this is a franchise that has a lot of pride, a lot of great players, and I really like what Jonathan Scope said to Carly in his interview. And this is why, suddenly I have another new favorite Tiger. It must be something. I have something for second baseman, I guess. But it is that he said, I came here to win games and reestablish what this franchise is all about. I mean, that's what you want to hear. Obviously, you can talk about contract, all that kind of stuff, but he's here because he knows if the Tigers start winning again, he's going to be one of those players. That's why I'm looking forward to seeing him. What a wonderful guy. I mean, he was just what a great interview. I really am psyched about that. I mean, he was just kind of reminds me of Craig Monroe in a little bit. Always happy, got a great perspective on things. So I'm looking forward. I hope that somehow this 82 game schedule is adopted and we can start seeing the Tigers take the field.
Definitely are. And Jonathan Scope spoke 4 languages, as we learned in his interview with Carly. And we have to give a shout out to a fan really quick. I'm looking at Facebook, and I'm sorry if I butcher this name, but I know we have Tigers fans and Red Wings fans all over the world. Pajarito is watching from Mexico. And he said that he loves the Tigers. I got that part out of his Spanish comment, but that's awesome. Watching all the way from Mexico. So thank you for tuning in.
Now, isn't it Tigres? Remember where the Tigers are paying homage to, well, Tigres, remember they wear that uniform. I can remember that says Tigres on it on Latin night or Latin American night. I'm sorry. I probably should know that, but I can remember that the Tigers used to get bombarded in the beginning where people would say, boy, they spelled Tigers wrong, but it's Tigres.
Yeah, I think he spelled it.
I can remember
at the beginning. I don't know if that's maybe the proper way to say it. I'm not sure. Yeah, but I got that he said he loves the Tigers.
A little bit behind the scenes chat here, but I'm gonna have to ask Stan about that.
All right. Well, thank you, Pajarito. saying your name right. Thank you for watching the show all the way from Mexico. We've still got a very exciting show for you guys. Carly's going to join us in just a little bit for Let's Socialize, but I'm going to pass this one over to Art for the headliner.
Thanks, Daniela. Time now for the headliner, brought to you by Miller Lite. Let's welcome in the television voice of the Detroit Red Wings. No stranger to any of us. Of course, I'm talking about Ken Daniels. Ken, thanks for joining us on the headliner. Really, really appreciate it.
Nice to be with you, Art. And I'll tell you what, if I don't get a haircut soon, I'm going to have a mullet. I'm going to look like Barry Melrose. It's awful.
Well, you know what? Barry's mullet, one of the best ever, but you're absolutely right. Hey, I've slicked my hair back for this interview because I know when I think fashion, I think two people, Craig Monroe and Ken Daniels. And you're looking great as always. So
Thank you, Art.
The beard looks trimmed at least.
A little bit trimmed. I've trimmed it probably 3 or 4 times in the 60-plus days that I've barely left this house. But yeah, I do a little bit. I'm not coloring it though, so there you go. It's all natural.
Yeah, I'm glad you're doing well. It's always great to talk to you, as I said. Let's talk about Sunday Fun Day, where you answer fans' questions on Instagram. Ken's on Instagram now. He's
Yes.
come into the next century.
Yep.
You and your beloved dog, whom I have met, Jack Daniels. Sponsored by Jack Daniels. What is this all about? How did it come about?
Well, I guess I saw and knew of Jack Daniels, my Jack Daniels, without the apostrophe. Get it? The dog without the apostrophe. There's an apostrophe in Jack Daniels, but not our name. So there you go. So Jack Daniels is just so cute. He's irresistible, that golden doodle, and just a great pup. So they saw pictures and that interested Jack Daniels. And I don't mind some Jack Daniels, Tennessee whiskey. That's all good with me. So we're on board with them, and fans every Sunday on the Red Wings Instagram page can send in questions. I love answering them because it connects me to the fans. And I think that's the most important thing. That's what I miss most about this pause is the camaraderie and everything that's going on. So when fans can ask questions, and Jack Daniels, my dog, can be a part of it. My daughter, Arlen, is really happy that the dog's becoming a star. And she's really helped me with Instagram. So that's been a wonderful thing. Ken Daniels TV. So please follow me on Instagram. We've got some already great posts up there of Mickey Redmond, and we've got even further posts coming up that I think you're really going to like, Art, down the road, including Gordie Howe elbowing me back in 1985 playing hockey when I wasn't smart enough to know that Gordie was way smarter than me, even at the age of 57 and quicker, and I got dumped. So we're going to have that one coming up too. I think you'll love some of this stuff.
Well, let me ask you, what have the fans been asking you? Is there a particular player, or is there one question that regardless that you have to keep answering, which we do in this business a lot, by the way, over and over and over again?
Yeah, so sometimes about players or what I miss about the game or my favorite player. And I guess I talk a lot about Pavel Datsyuk because as a play-by-play guy, you know, I tried not to overdo the, there goes that headset, overdo the Datsyukian Deke, but you know, I try to use it when I could. But I think as a play-by-play guy, you always waited for that guy to come over the boards, like we used to watch Gretzky or Lemieux or Yzerman, you know. And I think if you're a fan, you're watching Gordie Howe, you're waiting for him to hit the ice. And I think for me, it was Pavel Datsyuk or Nick Lidstrom for the most part, you know, through the 2000s for sure, and after Steve retired and Sergei Fedorov prior to that. So you wait for those stars to come over the board. So they asked me those who my favorite, and they asked me lots of questions about Mickey, and I never mind talking about Mick. So those that seems to be where they go.
Before we get into what we're going through now, and maybe a little bit of speculation looking at the season, you know, obviously I've got to ask you about the Jamie Daniels Foundation. I was looking forward to August 29th this year, your roast of Scotty Bowman. And I know you had a great one with Mickey last year. Where does that stand now?
Well, our foundation dinner last year for Mickey Redmond raised around $300,000 toward building a safe, long-term, sober housing facility in Jamie's memory, which we're still working on diligently. I have Zoom conference calls every day, so we're going to get it done. May take 2 to 3 years, but that's where a chunk of the money's going. Even with COVID-19 now, we've written 3 separate grants of $10,000 to groups who need the help, for families who've lost their jobs and can't pay their rent, or they get out of transitional housing. We don't want that to happen. So we've written those grants. We've written a $30,000 grant in conjunction with Children's Foundation, which runs our 501 for Michigan State and their recovery housing program for recovery coaches, which is like a fitness trainer, so to speak, to keep you on path. And we're looking to go to other colleges to do that. So that's where the money goes to that we raised, and we're continue to do so. Yes, we've had to pivot for August 29th. We're not sure when we're going to hold it, nor how we're going to hold it, but I've got a lot of folks videoing tributes to Scotty Bowman. Might it be partially live? Could we move it to November? That's a possibility. We've got time. I don't necessarily see hockey either way being played in November. So could we do it there? Could you have a group of 50 people? Could we do a somewhat live show? We've got Dave Hodge, former Hockey Night in Canada
Great announcer.
host. Yeah, to MC. He was prior to Ron McLean, and Dennis Hull lined up. Ian Bagg, who was there, and Jim Ralph, who was there for Mickey's Roast last year. And who knows who else we can get, and a lot of people doing video tributes. So somehow we're going to get it done. Maybe it's just online through all the social media platforms, or it's a live show we can put together. But follow JamieDanielsFoundation.org. You can donate there. You know where the money's going to, and if we can, we will get this done. The roast for Scotty, he's on board somehow, some way, at some point. We're going to get it done, and it's going to be a fabulous, whether it's an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, however, we're going to pivot the right way. We're having meetings constantly about it. We're going to get it done and continue to raise funds.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's a great cause. You know where I stand on this. If I can do anything for you, I will. And
Thank you,
I just want to say, taking what truly is a tragedy, and we don't have to get into all the particulars about it, and the way you have turned it around and the way that you have honored your son is, I tear up when I think about it. I truly do. I mean, what a tremendous thing. And Ken, I just think what a wonderful, wonderful thing. And, knowing you like I do, there's probably no one better than you to probably get something like this off the ground.
I'll tell you what, Art, I know that every day, I'm on Instagram now at Ken Daniels TV, as we mentioned. So my son, Jamie, up there is just laughing his rear end off because he always wanted me on social media. And when people went after me on social media on Twitter, of which I'm not on, my son would go after them because he's just so loyal. So Jamie would laugh at that, and Jamie loved to laugh. His laugh was infectious, and that's why we did the roast. So it all comes together. Every day I can talk about him. I know it's sad, but the more I talk about him, the more his memory stays alive. And I think anyone who's lost someone, and that's all I can tell people, is don't be afraid to go up and say, I'm sorry, and talk about that individual, whomever they've lost. I think it keeps their memory alive. Yes, sometimes it's hard, but you can't ignore it. You got to sometimes just lean into the pain, and it can make it better.
No one really knows, but we do know that eventually we're going to have hockey back. So let's concentrate a little bit on, I know it's been bandied about an early draft. There's going to be a draft. So there's going to be a draft. We don't know when it's going to be. I know there was all kinds of speculation, but what are the Red Wings going to do in the draft? There's an easy one. I just threw you a softball, Kenny.
Alex Lafreniere is pretty much, from what I hear from everyone, but that's not to say some players behind Lafreniere can't in time be as good maybe as Lafreniere. I mean, how do you really know? Through the course of history, you'll see many who were drafted late, you thought this was a no-brainer, right? And it turned out there were some who were way better than some others, right? So
right.
How do you really know? I know that when I saw Tim Stützle play for Germany at the World Juniors in December, I remember going on Red Wings Live pregame and just say, wow, this kid can fly. He's like, I don't know if he's got quite the savvy of Patrick Kane, but when you see him and he can play some center, you know how big Quentin Byfield is at that size at 6'5", and Jamie Drysdale on the blue line who's a right-hand shot. Although I do think the Red Wings, they're set up pretty nicely on the right side with Hronek and Mo Seider. I think they like Gustav Lindstrom. You got Seth Barton coming, and I know Drysdale's a right-hand shot. Again, depending where they're picking. And if anything you do today, it's not like everybody's expected to step right in. You're also building, and someone else becomes maybe something you can trade, and another piece comes in. So I don't know. I'm sure they know what they're doing. And can the Red Wings be worse than 2? That would be nice to have that option, right? But how do you know when they're holding the draft? And so much, Art, when they're talking about early draft, I guess now early June is out the window. And I know the general managers wanted it held after the season is complete. But think about this for a moment. If you've got a play-in game, let's say there's 20 or 24 teams and the Red Wings aren't part of that and they decide to play for the Cup. And right now you've got, what is it, Montreal, if they wind up playing Pittsburgh and you got some play-in thing, and Montreal, which finished, I don't know, 14 points or whatever they are behind Pittsburgh, but they get a chance to get in, not the playoffs, but a play-in to get there. And then they were to beat out the Penguins to get in. Should that still, they're in the playoffs, Montreal, entitle them now still to a higher draft position than Pittsburgh? If Pittsburgh were to fall out? Or look on the other side, if Chicago were to upset Calgary somehow in some play-in, does Chicago still hold their draft pick when Calgary is not now out and not in the playoffs? So all those permutations come into play. I don't know how you work it out. And the bottom line is not all 31 teams are going to be happy.
It's all up in the air. Eventually it's all going to be figured out. Another thing that we know is going to happen is unrestricted free agency. We really don't know who will be available of teams. Usually the high-end guys usually sign with the team that they're playing for already. But and there are exceptions. I understand Tavares goes to the Leafs. I understand that. But I think the one thing we can agree upon in unrestricted free agency, whenever that is Detroit's going to add a veteran goalie.
Well, Jacob Markstrom for sure in Vancouver would be a name that pops up right away, right? They've got Thatcher Demko. I think Markstrom would love to stay in Vancouver, but are you going to love him on a longer-term deal with perhaps a no trade when Demko's coming? And then can they sign Tyler Toffoli? So they got some cap issues depending what they were to give Jacob Markstrom. So he's a name. Robin Leonard's another name. I love Robin Leonard. Love Jacob Markstrom. Two goalies who could both be available. So that's for sure. And when does free agency happen? There's another good question, right? It could, if the season were to start in December, could you do it early October and then they had a couple of months off if they got to play for the Stanley Cup? You could do it then when the season's over, same time as the draft. But yeah, those are two that pop to mind. And what defenseman do you have in mind, Art? I know you must have a defenseman in mind.
Well, you know who I like. You already mentioned him. I like
you already talked about Livonia.
I like Eric Gustafson. Hey, look, I think Torrey Krug's going to stay. As much as I'd love to see him in the red and white, I think he's going to stay in Boston. I definitely think that's going to happen. They're just so close. They're such a great team. I think the Bruins obviously want him. He's so good on the power play. That would be great. But I'm looking at a guy like Eric Gustafson, who Calgary traded for, so that might be tough. Somebody along those lines.
I've always defensively, though, Art. He struggles defensively. Eric Gustafson, yeah, he's got some offense, struggles defensively. That would be my only issue with him.
But TJ Brody?
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. Calgary, it was so like TJ Brody was an untouchable a few years ago now. But yeah, I mean, as I say, the Red Wings' right side, as we said, it can be pretty nicely set up. You're getting next season, whenever that may start, you're getting back Danny Dekeyser. You're adding a pretty good defenseman right there. So if you can add another defenseman, boy, if you talk about Torrey Krug, and you had Danny Dekeyser in there, it's a pretty good group. I'd say it's a young group except for Dekeyser, but I'd say it looks not bad coming. And you got Nemeth, and I would say Nemeth and Biega, two underrated guys who played against the opposition's best, I think, from February 1st on. And if you look at their plus minuses in that time, they almost held their own, which is pretty incredible considering the streaks of losing that the Red Wings unfortunately went through and the goals that were going in. But boy, Nemeth and Biega weren't bad. Two unsung guys, and Biega on the right side, Nemeth on the left side, and you've got Dekeyser. You hope for Cholowski and Jared McKaiser coming down the road. I'd say the defense looks better than a lot of people think. It's going to take time, but I think there's some really good prospects there coming. And what I saw from Gus Lindstrom, although there may be more time in GR, sure, and the way I keep hearing people who see Sider a lot more, just love him. So I think there's a lot of hope there to be had.
Ken, I could go on and on and on, but unfortunately we're out of time. But again, it's Sunday Fun Day. You're on Instagram. We're gonna have that Scotty Bowman roast in some way, shape, or form for the Jamie Daniels Foundation. Thank you for joining us here on the Headliner. We're gonna have you back very, very soon. It's always a pleasure talking to you. You be well, my friend.
Same here. I thank you to you and all the Red Wing fans. It's been a blast. Thank you.
Well, there you have it. Ken Daniels on the headliner, brought to you by Miller Lite, the original light beer with great taste and only 96 calories, available for delivery. Daniela, what can I say about Ken Daniels? He looks good in a beard.
He does look good in a beard, Art, and he's grooming it pretty well too. I know he said that he only did a little bit and he might need a haircut pretty soon, but hey, it looks pretty good, Ken. You're rocking it right now. And Art, one thing that I really liked there, he said it right at the end, that Ken seemed very optimistic about the Red Wings blue line, and that's something that people have not seemed so optimistic about in the past here and leading up to now. Did you agree with what he said, that he actually thinks it's better, the situation is better than people might see it as?
I agree with that. I mean, there was a point where the Red Wings lost, Nick Lidstrom, Brad Stewart, who went back west, and Brian Rafalski. So they lost half of the defensive core in a 2 or 3 year period. And I think from that time, they've tried to do some patchwork and make it work. And it's just been a little bit of a rough go. I think if you look at what they're trying to do, and I think, one thing when Steve became the general manager, Steve Yzerman, that is, he realized that if you're going to be strong, you've got to be strong on the back end. And, again, Mo Seider was not a surprise to me. He was going up the charts all season long, if you follow that stuff, and I do. So him at 6, was it a little bit of a stretch? Well, now Steve looks brilliant because Seider is the real deal. But with that said, Jarek McIsaac, Seth Barton, there's still a couple of guys that, Casper Kotzkonsalo, who, is at BU right now. I mean, they have a young nucleus and a young core. That's why it's important. And I think that's why Steve signed Kevin Biega to, it's Alex. I called him Kevin again. Signed him. Kevin Biega, get out of my head. But aside from that, it's and then Nemeth has been a great signing too. And so and then you bring in Danny back into the mix, and you have nice little veterans in there that can bring these guys in and bring them along slowly. I mean, as much as we talk about Seider, do not sleep on Gus Lindstrom either. I mean, he came in and I can remember talking to Sean Horkoff, the director of player development, and when Lindstrom was his first year pro was last year in Grand Rapids, and he didn't have like the offensive numbers. And the Red Wings, when they drafted Gus Lindstrom, no one had heard of him. I mean, they had heard of him, but no one thought he would go in the second round, like 36th overall or whatever it was. That looks like to be a pretty astute pick too, because as I said, I talked to Horkoff about this last season. I said, well, Lindstrom's first year, getting used to the smaller ice surface. I guess his offensive numbers might be a little bit disappointing. And this was back early in Grand Rapids season. And he said, we are extremely happy with Gus Lindstrom and the transition he's made. We don't care about the numbers. It's just the type of player he is. And lo and behold, when he gets called up to Detroit and starts playing for the Red Wings, I mean, he didn't look out of place at all. Cool, calm, collected. I mean, he's a Swede. What else would he be? But with that said, I think that there's a guy who obviously is going to be on the Detroit blue line for a number of years. Mo Seider's going to be. Jarek McIsaac is coming back from an injury, but he had a good second half of the season in the Quebec League. And so there is a semblance of a defense there. And then you've got some good veteran presence. Don't sleep on a guy like Joe Hicketts. Joe Hicketts can come up and, if his size and heart too. I mean, you need guys like that. So the Red Wing blue line, which is in a transition, I want to be clear about that. I mean, they're in a rebuild mode, the entire team, but there are some pieces there and some very good pieces. And if they fall to 4, depending on how this draft comes out, I think they're going to go for Jamie Drysdale, who could be, along with Mo Seider, maybe, your definitive number 1 pair. I know the left-hand, right-hand shot, and you want to figure that all out, but, they're in pretty shape. They really are. I agree with Ken on that one.
Art, what I took away from that is Don't sleep. Don't sleep on the Detroit defense. You said that, I think, about 3 different players.
No.
So none of us are sleeping.
Do not sleep on these guys because I think we're all eager to see this. This is the exciting thing about a rebuild. And I know that Steve has said this before, and I couldn't agree with him more. We're on the ground floor. We're watching this foundation be built. And what's going to be really satisfying, and I'll throw the Tigers in here, when they hoist the Stanley Cup or the World Series trophy with all those pennants on it, we here in Detroit can say, God, I remember when so-and-so, was a rookie. I remember everything. I mean, we're here from the very beginning on, and in that way, it's kind of exhilarating and exciting too.
It is, Art. I couldn't agree with you more, and we are all looking forward to those days. Let's bring in Carly, Art. What do you say we bring her back for Let's Socialize,
Yes.
presented by AAA. And Carly, I know you've been all over the social media accounts, and fans have been interacting with you. You've been interacting with them. What do you got for us today?
That's right. Thanks, Daniela. I do have some fan questions for you guys to start. And Art, I'm going to start with you. EC Clark wants to know, when the NHL season resumes, do we see any Grand Rapids players playing for Detroit, or will we see just who Detroit had before the shutdown?
Well, that's a great question. First of all, Carly, I want to ask you, how's your back feeling? You didn't injure yourself from patting yourself too hard on the back after. I bet you didn't know, right? You're feeling good?
No. I could use some more. And you know what, Art? I could use some from you too.
Yeah, really? All right. I'll virtually be patting you on the back during this whole segment.
Thank you.
With that said, that's really, really interesting because on Thursday's show, we have Giovanni Smith on, and I'm really eager to talk about him because I think what you're going to see an expanded roster because none of these guys have skated and have played high-end hockey for a long time now. I keep referring to this, but Justin Abdicator said when we come back, we're going to need at least a month. And so what I think is going to happen is that instead of the 24-man roster that hockey has, I think you're going to see some Grand Rapids Griffins because their season's officially canceled. Giovanni Smith, Mo Sider, people, you maybe throw in a Joe Hickett's, Joe Valeno, some of the forwards in there, because if they come back and play, they're obviously going to need players, and they're going to need some young players, which is a really interesting thing. I mean, now I'm thinking really long term, but when they come back next year, the AHL is a ticket-driven sport, and if they can't have fans, I don't even know if it makes business sense for the AHL to even open. Does that mean that the Red Wings roster next season will be an expanded roster of Griffins players, or will Grand Rapids make some deals with Cleveland and Milwaukee and stuff like that and play a bunch of exhibition games just to keep them played? I mean, there's a lot of questions to look at that, but to get back to EC's question, yes, we're going to see if the Red Wings come back and they finish out this season, and I think if they begin next season, depending on what the AHL does, you're going to see Grand Rapids Griffins playing in Detroit. But we call them at playoff time the guys that come up, the Black Aces, because they wear black jerseys during practice and they don't play. Well, we're going to see a number of Black Aces or a number of Griffins, I think, if the Red Wings come back this season, and I think next season, again, depending on what the AHL does.
I don't know about you guys, but I look forward to hopefully seeing Joe Valeno in a wing wheel jersey. Okay, now moving on to Daniela. I have a question for you from Hey It's Common Gamer, and he wants to know if there is a shortened season, how will this affect Mize, Manning, Skubal, etc., and their rise through the system? And obviously that is on the Detroit Tigers in the MLB.
Well, Carly, I think when you emphasized on the if, that's kind of where this whole question goes. There's a lot of uncertainty around the MLB. There's a lot of uncertainty around the minor leagues as well. And yeah, it's a bummer that they're not playing games and getting that experience that hopefully would develop them into MLB caliber players. But at the same time, the guys that are MLB players right now are not getting any, they're not having any game experience. They're not playing in games either. So they're still kind of in the same boat. Obviously, it's a little different. And one thing that I really do believe might be affected is when they make their major league debut, because, guys like Casey Mize and Matt Manning, there was talk that they possibly could have been brought up to the major leagues. They could have been on the Tigers come, August, September, seeing the Tigers at the end of the season. But I don't know with the shortened season, if the season is shortened, as you said, or whatever the situation is, if that will be affected by it. But I'm thinking that the Tigers will have a very good plan to make sure that they're still developing the way that they're supposed to, and they will be on the Tigers very, very soon.
Absolutely. I know a lot of the athletes out there are struggling, not just not being able to play the game, but also trying to get that training in that they would otherwise get if they were at the facilities and having all of those amenities. And also spotted on Instagram, huge congrats are in order for Buck and Kayla Farmer. They are expecting their second child. So congratulations to them. But one thing I wanted to point out, the caption, that made me laugh when he said, "See what happens when you take away baseball." I know, not saying they're bored, but they definitely have a lot more time on their hands than if he'd be playing baseball in season right now. So congrats to them. That's incredible. They will be expecting Farmer baby number 2 in November. And then check out this sweet, sweet video of a Tigers fan who turned 105 years old. What an amazing life. She got a birthday shout out from none other than Dan Dickerson. So take a look.
Hi, Evelyn. It's Dan Dickerson with the Detroit Tigers. Happy 105th birthday. That is amazing. I know it's not how you wanted to celebrate it with your family, but we just wanted to let you know that all of us for the Detroit Tigers are thinking of you, our most loyal fan, and we are really hoping that we give you some games to listen to sometime this summer. In the meantime, be well, happy birthday, and all the best to you and your family.
Dan Dickerson. Yes. Oh my gosh. That's something.
I mean, come on, right in the feels. That melted my heart, made me want to hug my grandparents so bad. But major shout out and a happy birthday to Evelyn. And speaking of birthdays, we are wishing a big happy birthday to Brandon Inge. Shout out to him. And then you guys, just a reminder, we wanted you guys to know once again that the Detroit Tigers will be hosting their virtual happy hour with Miller Lite tonight, hosted by Matt Shepard. How exciting. Guests will include Alan Trammell and Jack Morris and, of course, Gardy. Once again, it is tonight on Zoom, and only the first 1,000 fans that hop on that will be able to join. So keep your eye on the Tigers Twitter tonight at 5 p.m. for that Zoom information to get in on that conversation. That's pretty cool, guys.
That is really cool, Carly. And I want to go back to, first of all, happy birthday, Evelyn, 105. That's amazing.
Right.
And the little baby that we saw from the farmer's post, too, was so cute. I think maybe we should all get moving. That might be really good for the show, right?
How cute is that picture, though? I mean, they did such a good job with that announcement. And then that caption really got me. That made me laugh out loud.
Yeah, very good. Very good.
Art, you're quiet over there.
Art,
what's going on?
Yeah, he looks like
what's happening?
I'm trying to think. Actually, I have my trusty Tigers media guide right here. I wonder what Buck Farmer's real name is. Is it Buck? Is it Buckley? Will we have a Buckley Jr.? Let me. I'm just kind of curious. What the child's name is going to be, and what I hope it's Buckley Farmer, but I'm sure Buck is a nickname.
You may just have to wait until November to find that out, Art. Who knows if they'll be sharing the names anytime before the baby comes, but
yeah, I just want to say I hope that the baby is born on a certain early November date, because then he would share a birthday with a great human being, me. So I'm patting myself on the back there. So hopefully, I'm not gonna reveal it because he would be a triber, as I like to say. So hopefully Buck Jr. or Buckley Jr. or Samantha Jr. whatever is born in early November.
I found his real name.
Hopefully.
is George. It's George Farmer.
Is George? George?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, that was my
The
dad's
more
name.
you know.
George. All
Well,
right.
look at that.
George Farmer or Buck Farmer. All right, fans, let's vote. Would you rather go by George or
Oh,
Buck?
yeah.
I think that'd be
George
a
Buck.
close vote, actually. George Buck. Yeah,
Those are both great
like
names.
that.
Those are both great names.
Hi, I'm George Farmer. Hi, I'm Buck Farmer. Maybe as a pro athlete, although doesn't get much better than George Brett, right? I'm thinking of famous Georges who play the game now,
Yeah.
but
What about Art Regner? That's quite the
Buck,
name.
George. Yes, Arthur, though. I hated my name when I was younger. I mean, I just hated it. It rhymes with something that I heard a lot of. Art at least does. And so, yes, there you go. Thank you. Boy, Carly's rolling today. Yeah. It got to a point where I heard it. It got to a point where I heard that so much that people would come up to me and go, Art the Fart, and there's a Gene made a machine. Joe made it go. Art, blew a fart and blew the whole damn thing apart. That and people. I mean, I am talking about this thing. I heard it my whole life at a certain age. Well, I was trying to think, how do I combat this? And so what I did is that people would come up and say it to me, and I'd stop dead in my tracks.
Okay.
And I'd go like, "Oh my God, you are brilliant! I have never heard that before. My God, people, we have a genius here. This guy just was able to take art and fart and realize they rhyme. My God, you were going to cure cancer." I mean, I would go on and on and on. First of all, they thought I was
down the
completely
bullies.
weird and odd. But I guess, but they never called me Art the Fart again. So, keep that.
You might want to watch out. Your name tag next time might say Fart instead of Art. So next show, you might want to watch that.
Yeah, right.
Well, you know what? I mean, Arthur, my whole family has always called me Arthur. Arthur's a cool name. I like the name Arthur. And I've never really been called Artie. A few people have called me Artie. Artie is not a name that I like. But it's better than Fart. But Art has always been basically my name, except if you're a family member who all call me Arthur. So it's very.
Art, I don't think I could call you anything except for Art.
Yeah. Thank you, Carly. I appreciate that. Here, let me pat you on the back. I appreciate that.
I got you. High five.
There you go.
This has been a good show.
Right,
I'll never call you Art the Fart.
Anything with fart is what they were saying here.
Yeah. I mean, trust me.
That conversation took a weird turn.
It really
a bit of a weird tap.
George Farmer, I apologize. I didn't mean to steal your thunder. Congratulations to you and your wife.
Yes, that's not exactly what I thought we would be talking about when I hosted that.
I really did.
That's what happens. All right. Well, thanks, guys. I appreciate it. And fans, thank you so much for sending in your questions.
Thank you, Carly. That was great as always. And as she said, she's watching the social media account. She's getting questions that are sent in. So make sure that you guys are sending those in each and every show. And that was a Let's Socialize segment presented by AAA. A big thank you to our friends at AAA. And they say thank you with free roadside assistance for first responders and healthcare workers fighting to defeat COVID-19. You protect us by going to work every day. Let AAA protect you on the way there and back. And Art, here we are again at the end of another show. It's been a great one. We had some really, really, really great guests today. And we still got all of those FSD games to watch this week. So we're going to have a lot of fun this whole week.
Oh, yeah, certainly. I'm looking forward to the FSD games. The 2012 team / 2013 Tigers. I mean, those are some of the best teams, in Detroit Tiger history. The championship series. I can go on about. Then, of course, then you follow that up with the All-Star games, and again, those early All-Star games, just because there wasn't interleague play, that was the time to see the National League stars, or vice versa, the American League stars, depending on what league you were a fan of. So that's going to be great. And tonight, Chicago. I was at that game actually. The radio station used to send Doug and I over to Chicago quite a bit, and we always broadcast our show from the Tiger radio booth. So that brings back some memories too, where Double D and Double Wow sit. So I'm looking forward to it. It'll be fun, and I'm looking forward to Thursday's show too. I'm really looking forward to talking to Giovanni Smith. He's come a long way, and certainly if the Red Wings do begin, the season does resume, and the Red Wings begin playing, I do expect, as I said earlier, an expanded roster, and I would be shocked if Giovanni isn't one of those players on that expanded roster.
Art, you read my mind. I was going to ask you how excited you were to have Giovanni Smith join the show. And you mentioned Double D too. Dan Dickerson will be back for the mailbag. He's always great. So we've got a lot planned for Thursday's show. And you're going to talk to John Morosi again from MLB Network as well.
Right. JP and I go back. The thing that I've always liked about JP is that, he's from here. He's from Michigan. He's a lifelong Tiger and Red Wings fan. He knows a lot about the history of the team, and he kind of double dips. I'm a little bit envious. He not only does he know about baseball and the Tigers, but he also knows the National Hockey League. So it's always fun to talk to JP, as I call him. I loved when he was covering the Tigers for the Free Press. I thought he did a great job. So that should be fun. And I'm really looking. Giovanni's been a blogger. I've known Giovanni for a long, long time, and I just can't wait to hear. And I know you're going to also talk to him as well. We're both going to do that interview. I'm looking forward to that. Always look forward to sharing a microphone with you, Daniela. So it's going to be fun. I really think that it's going to be it's going to be interesting because he's a young player, and I think you'll find out. We had Danny Dekeyser on, and Dekeyser, you can ask him anything. He's going to talk. Oh yeah, he's been answering questions for years now. You got a younger player on, except if it's Joe Valeno, you're talking about your hair, is Joe's hair, which he'll go on forever about. But I think that he wants to say some stuff, but he doesn't want to have too much bravado. So it should be pretty interesting to hear what Giovanni has to say.
Well, you guys heard it. You got to tune in to Thursday's show. Dan Dickerson, Giovanni Smith, and John Morosi, plus much, much more. So make sure that you are tuning in every Tuesday and Thursday at noon. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we will see you guys on Thursday.
Thanks.